Hi, good evening and welcome to the 8th Selborne College and Old Selbornian Association webinar as part of our 150th Jubilee celebration. I'm Jacqueline Engelbrecht, the Head of Business Studies at Selborne College. The theme of this webinar is commerce. We will get thoughts from Old Selbornians who are currently in the field. The discussion will be focused for the boys who may have an interest in the field of commerce. Panelists will share their experiences, what they've learned and what they wish that they'd known earlier. We request that if you have any questions, you place them in the chat. You'll find the chat at the top right-hand corner of your screen. We regret that Mr. Daniel Africhtig will not be joining us tonight as he's currently unwell. We wish him his speedy recovery. This webinar also showcases the success of our Old Selbornians, whom we are extremely proud of. It's with great pleasure that I introduce our first attendee, Mr. Khanyisa Limikaya. He matriculated from Selborne College in 2001 with distinction. He completed his BCom in Finance and Economics from the University of Cape Town in 2006 and began a career at FNB, where he excelled to management, but resigned after only 2 years as the entrepreneurial bug had bitten. Khanyisa is currently a shareholder and director in the following businesses: Lucchini SA, an Italian-owned railway wheels and axles manufacturer in Johannesburg, boasting the Gautrain amongst its customers; Plasma Cut, a 36-year-old steel services center in Johannesburg within the Afmetco Euro Steel Group; Magnumus, a steel trading business he founded 10 years ago; and DataTech Consumer Solutions, a tech company specializing in consumer analytics, founded in 2022. Khanyisa currently lives in Johannesburg. Over to you.
Thank you, JJ. Okay, so I don't know where I'll start. I'll just start. Started at Selborne Primary, I think it was 95. Went on to Selborne College, matriculated from Selborne College, went to UCT as the profile suggests. Went on to work at the bank and then went into entrepreneurship. So currently, and I'll talk about the 4 businesses that JJ has listed. Let's start with Lucchini SA. So it's an Italian majority owned business. And we own, I say we because it's a consortium of us, we own 30% of the business. It manufactures railway wheels and axles. So the Gautrain wheels that they use on the Gautrain are our wheels, for example. And a lot of the wagon wheels that Transnet uses to move iron ore and coal and all these other commodities, they also, majority of them are our wheels. And that was a factory which was launched in 2016. Previously, all those wheels were just being imported fully. So we decided to localize so that we could do some job creation in the country, do some value add in the country. And it was just the right thing to do. About 10-minute drive from that factory is another factory called Plasma Cut Steel Services Center, as has been mentioned. It's part of the Eurosteel. It's actually the African Metals Corporation group, but it's known as Eurosteel. There's actually a Eurosteel branch in East London, and it's part of that group. And we again, being myself and a group of people who have a stake in that business, and I'm one of the executive directors as well. I suppose a business that's very dear to me is Magnumus. Dear to me because I founded that business, and it's finished 10 years in existence this year. It did not start as a steel trading business. It started off as a frozen chicken leg quarter trading business, where I used to import these leg quarters through Durban from the EU and previously from Brazil and those areas through Durban. And then I had a very major customer in Tanzania at the highway taxi rank, and he used to take a lot of that stuff from me. Some of you may know a gentleman by the name of Jose. Used to own Crave Meats. I'm not sure if he's still there. Crave Meats, which is also just outside East London. So I've supplied him once or twice. But that's where the business started, and then it became, I started trading steel after that because I got into the manufacturing space for steel. And then Data Tech, of course, is the one I recently founded earlier this year. And like it suggested, it specializes in consumer analytics using a tech platform that reverse bills data so that the end user doesn't pay for the data. It's actually data free. And it leverages off another company called Data Free. But that's a long story. Typically, during my day involves actually dealing with all the businesses, funny enough, where I'll wake up and go to the one factory and deal with issues there, then go to the next factory, deal with issues there, and then at least by around lunchtime, I can come back to this side of the world. I say this side of the world, the factories are in Germiston, which is mostly manufacturing side of Joburg. This side of the world being around Sandton area, the area where I live, where I also have a small office that I operate from. And a typical day will involve predominantly sales driven, because I think any entrepreneur will tell you that most of their time is spent on trying to sell whatever service or product that they have, but also making sure that accounts are paid, also making sure that suppliers are paid. And you know, the more senior you get in an organization, director level, you're just resolving issues all the time. Everyone brings you the problems and you must bring the solutions. So yeah, that's pretty much what my day-to-day entails. I think I've learned a lot of lessons being in business, and I've been very fortunate from the time I was at F&B to actually have a lot of people who have mentored me along the journey, people who have been there before. And there are some very interesting lessons I've learned along the way. One of the things is, and I told him today that I would give him a shout out, one of my business partners at Eurosteel, he's actually the founder, Colin Wilson. And we were recounting how he founded the business in '94, I think, to be what it is now, 800 to 1,000 employees at any given moment. He founded it from the back of his bakkie. And what he tells me is that majority of the entrepreneurial journey is resilience. That's really what you've got to be. Keep your integrity in place, intact, but be resilient in trying to survive whatever is thrown your way. And if you're resilient, eventually, whatever lows you're experiencing it turns into highs, and you will reap the rewards at the highs. But remember, there's still a low that's coming. And I think another thing I've learned from, which is not business related, but just Selborne related, coming from a school like Selborne, where there's a history of traditions, is it actually, you don't realize it then, but you walk out of Selborne with more than just an academic education. You also get educated in life skills and just the way you think and approach things. And you get taught a lot about integrity. So looking back on that now, I have zero regrets about going to a school like Selborne College.
Thank you so much. Next up, we have Mr. Barry Myers. He matriculated from Selborne College in 1994. Barry took part in the first overseas Selborne College tour in 1993 to Henley for rowing, and the broader team also included cricketer Mark Boucher. He received double school honours for academics and rowing, rowed for the South African under-19 team at World Rowing Champs in Munich. He received the Alan Barker Prize for all-round achievement and was a prefect. Barry completed his BCom from Stellenbosch University and finished his law degree in Leuven, Belgium. He has completed other studies, including an MBA from Cambridge University. Barry has, since 2001, worked as a lawyer, personal financial planner, investment banker, and most recently, senior executive in the largest private fund admin company globally. Barry led the most successful equity capital markets team in the UK for JP Morgan until February 2022. He spent 16 years in investment banking. The last 6 as managing director and head of UK and SSA equity capital markets investment banking at Barclays and JP Morgan. JP Morgan is the #1 investment bank in the UK and globally. He's worked in Joburg, London, and has recently moved to Bermuda. Over to you, sir.
Thanks, JJ. Sorry, that was a bit of a long introduction. My career, I guess, has taken a long and winding road. So I finished Selborne in '94. And I rowed for South Africa that year at the World Champs in under 19. And rowing was the kind of sport we were spending 6-7 hours a day at least training. And we got to World Champs, and the Romanian women's crew was bigger than every single one of us in the South African men's crew. So I decided that probably rowing wasn't going to be the sport for me. And at that time, I'd received a scholarship to go to Rhodes Grahamstown University for rowing. So I decided to pick something very far away from Rhodes. I didn't want to row anymore, so I decided to go to Stellenbosch. So it wasn't a very informed decision, but I ended up at Stellenbosch University, which is a fantastic place to spend time, and ended up spending 6 years there. Did my BCom and then changed to law, which was good. And as Jay just said, I sort of then went to Belgium to finish my law degree at a university called Leuven, which is quite a famous law university. I then came back to Joburg, and as you do when you're a lawyer, you get your articles of association, and I got articles of a big law firm called Cliff Decker. But shortly into that, I realized that law probably wasn't going to be for me. I loved studying law, but working as a lawyer just wasn't my cup of tea. So finished my articles and tried to get into investments, and joined a chap that was one of the Sanlam's most successful insurance and investment brokers, and worked with him for 3 or 4 years doing tax advice. But on the back of that tax advice, investing people's money, and we did pretty well. We started our own little business. So it was our first taste of entrepreneurial work. It didn't work out perfectly in the end. We went our separate ways, and I was at a loss at sort of what to do at that point. Having spent 8 years qualifying as a lawyer, having spent 4 years in setting up our own company that was going well, but in the end, it didn't work out for us. And then decided, look, I'll do my MBA, because an MBA is a great way to sort of spend a year thinking about what you want to do and meeting other people and networking. So I did my MBA at Cambridge, which was fantastic. And again, it slightly went back to my rowing past. I'd been to Cambridge before, and I'd always watched the guys row, and always been in admiration of that. So I thought Cambridge sounds like a good place to spend a year of my life. I was then sort of 29 already, and I hadn't really made any money of any note, so I started to get a little bit worried about that. And then probably did 100 interviews on the back of that MBA at Cambridge, because Cambridge University, unlike some of the other big American universities, isn't known for its getting people into investment banking jobs. And I got to Cambridge thinking I've got 2 choices. I can either become a consultant, or I can become an investment banker. And anyway, speaking to lots of people, I thought maybe investment banking is the way to go, but obviously it's extremely hard to get into investment banking at the age of 30 when you've got a very different career. But at the time, I interviewed at a place called Cazenove, which is an old British bank, and they were very open to taking people from very different backgrounds, whether you were in the army as a captain, or you did something completely different. And so it happened that I ended up working for the chairman of Cazenove, a guy called David Mayhew. That was extremely lucky place to be. I was really just his, run around chap. I was a junior person, but I got to learn from this person that was probably the doyen of the city at the time, which was hugely lucky. So I jumped on that opportunity, and ended up spending around 16 years at JP Morgan. What happened after 3 or 4 years at Cazenove is that JP Morgan, the very big investment bank, came in and saw the good work that Cazenove was doing in the UK in terms of winning all these clients in investment banking, and decided they'd just buy Cazenove. And so the combination became extremely powerful in the recession, when all these companies were struggling, 2007, 8, 9, 10, they were all failing. Cazenove had all the great relationships, and banking, like any business, is all about trust and relationships. And JP Morgan had the massive balance sheet to be able to stand behind these companies and underwrite these big rights issues and save these companies from financial downfall. So kind of right time, right place, worked very hard, had to work through the ranks, starting at the age of 30 as an analyst. And most analysts, Anissa will tell you, you're probably 21 when you start as an analyst at R&B or JP Morgan. So I was a lot older, so I had the challenges of that, but so worked my way up the ranks over time. And then decided to move to Barclays in 2015 to get more sort of sales experience. I just wasn't at JP Morgan, a very big institution. You're just not getting the kind of experience you want. There's always going to be someone better than you there at pitching the business. So I went to Barclays, where the field was a bit less crowded. Managed to become head of their team over there. And then after 2 years, JP Morgan wanted me back to head up their team. And just very briefly, what is equity capital markets? It's one third of the investment banking area, where essentially you're taking private companies and then listing them on the stock exchange. And I led the team that listed all private companies on the London Stock Exchange over the last 16 years or so. And then most recently, we had a record year last year. Actually, COVID was very good. It's embarrassing to say for investment banks. We did extremely well during COVID, raising money for companies. And then the year last year, when COVID had dissipated, it was the best year ever for IPOs, taking private companies and listing them publicly ever in London. So it was a record year, and I thought, maybe now's the time to go and try, be a bit more entrepreneurial again and see where that takes me. So I joined a company called Apex, which is It's a fund administration business. It's based in Bermuda. It's private. It's owned by Carlyle and TA Associates and Genstar private equity firms. And we will look to IPO ourselves hopefully in 3 or 4 years' time. So completely out of my comfort zone, 3 months into the job. But you know, I think a couple of lessons along the way. Like I studied for a long time, and maybe that's something you could say, be more decisive. But actually, at the end of the day, it's given me, you know, a real amount of optionality. I've been able to work as a lawyer, sort of salesman, investment broking, investment banking, and now trying my hand at something else. So it can give you optionality if you like studying and if you go to a good university and meet good people. I think the other thing is just don't be afraid to pivot and you know, move tangentially around what you know, because actually, you know, you'll learn a lot more and you'll become much more rounded entrepreneur, professional. So I think don't be afraid to move around. And lastly, I think for me, I've been lucky enough to do a lot of international studies and international work in Belgium, Cambridge, etc. And nowadays the workforce, certainly the professional workforce, everyone's looking for diversity, and the team is much stronger with diversity. And if you know how to interact with people from all over the world, that's a huge benefit to you. And I agree completely with Kanisa. I think Selborne is a great example of people that come from all over, very different backgrounds, and I'm very happy to have gone to that school. When you compare yourself to some schools in England, I won't mention names, you know, it's very one-dimensional. And what you see now in universities like Oxford and Cambridge, they're pushing back very hard against people that come from those kind of schools. So that's my sort of story, and obviously happy to take questions later. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Barry. Next up is Mr. Andre Vos, who matriculated from Selborne College in 1992. He completed his BCom from UPE in 1996 and his CFP accreditation at the University of Free State in 2009. In 2007, he joined Harkins, Harrison & Co. at the London office before being transferred to South Africa in 2009. In mid-2009, he joined Sanlam Private Wealth, and his current role is portfolio manager responsible for the investment of private client investment portfolios. Andre represented South Africa in rugby, making his international debut on the 12th of June 1999 against Italy. He played a total of 33 test matches. He took over the captaincy in 1999 and captained South Africa on 16 different occasions. Thank you, Andre.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Really good to be here. As you heard, the class of 1992, so it's our very big reunion this year. Looking forward to getting back to East London in October. My mom still lives there, my in-laws are still there, so looking forward to that and looking forward to seeing the old faces again. So this is a financial services session, but Alan has asked me to speak a little bit about my old life, and so I will reluctantly do that. Share some thoughts, share some of the things that I've learned, and then we'll move on to financial services. So matriculated 92, went to what is now NNMU, and it was the real school of hard knocks. When you're a university side and you have to go to dispatch into Utenag, it's an experience in itself, and it's one, if you come out alive, you think that's a success. And I suppose after that, got an opportunity to move up to Johannesburg. It was 1996, 97, just after the guys had won the World Cup, and a wonderful opportunity for a young guy like myself to play with the vast majority of those guys who made up the core of that World Cup side. So the thing to learn there is that you think that you have an opportunity to work in this amazing environment and to learn everything that you know, which I thought at the time, until I got the opportunity to go and play in Australia. I played for the Queens and Reds and played alongside guys like John Eales, Jason Little, Horan, those sorts of guys, and you just realize that where you think you've arrived, where you think you know everything, you actually don't, and there's an opportunity to learn in every situation. There are different views, different perspectives, different ways to get something done, and I think that was a real learning curve for me. I had some fantastic highlights representing South Africa. Very, very interestingly and fortuitously, my first game to lead the Springbok team was in East London. And I don't know if you can still hear me. Okay, sorry. That's just my technical.
Yeah, we can.
My technical bad. There we go. Yeah, my first test as captain in East London. Some of the old boys in the stand singing Waters of Victoria as we ran out to warm up. It was it's something that you can't really script. So a wonderful first experience there. And then you always remember the one about, you know, when you get to play All Blacks at Ellis Park and the scoreboard is in your favor, and it's a fantastically intense, physical, fast game, and everyone of significance in your life is in the stand. So lots of highlights. I also got the opportunity to play overseas in the UK, and had a fantastic time there. With one huge low. So what we didn't have at the time when I was playing was when sides get relegated. So I played for London Harlequins, and a massive life lesson. You heard earlier that it's not always going to be about the highs, but they're very definitely going to be a few occasions in life when you hit your head, and sometimes you hit it quite hard, and having been relegated is something that I don't really recommend to anyone. You go into the office the week after you've lost your last game, and you see the lady who headed up the marketing department having to get all her stuff together because she lost her job because I lost the game of rugby. So lots of perspective and lots of stuff to learn from that experience as well. So you can only speak scrums and lineouts for so long, and then I suppose if your mind, if you like to use your mind, then you need to look for the next opportunity. I often say that I was extremely fortunate, matriculating in '92. The obvious thing for a young individual who has aspirations to further their careers was to go off to university. So that doesn't always happen nowadays. Guys get whipped up into Sharks Academies, Stormers Academies, and they don't always prioritize their education. So there's another lesson. If you can, please, even if you are being whipped up into a sporting academy, please prioritize your education. The learning I did after my rugby career was all stuff that required a degree. So if you haven't got that, you're starting from zero as opposed to at least starting from somewhere. I was in the UK at the time of hanging up my boots. Hitchens Harrison was a small stockbroker, very much in that equity capital markets space that you heard about, where we had corporate clients that we were taking to market. That was in 2008, 2009, which I'm sure most of you will be aware was the global financial crisis. And when you're trying to phone up fund managers that you know to introduce your corporate client, and you're in the middle of a global financial crisis, it isn't necessarily so easy. Few lessons there. Make sure that you believe in what you're doing. So we had a few corporate clients on our books where the investment story wasn't necessarily one that I would have invested my own dollars into. So becomes hard when you're having to pick up the phone and sell something that isn't necessarily going to find its way into your investment portfolio. So if you do get into careers in things like financial services, make sure that it's something you'll do with your own money, or make sure that it's a financial product that you would buy. I had the opportunity to move over to Sanlam Private Wealth. I've been with them a long time now. I love investing markets. thing about investment markets is you have to read a lot. You got to stay up to date. One day is never the same as the next, and your clients look to you at all times to as far as possible know all the answers and to be able to help them and guide them through hard times. One final comment: financial services is about all things finance. It's about understanding investment markets, but for me, most importantly, it's about engaging with the underlying client. It's their money. They've worked really hard for it, and you have to respect that. As soon as you lose the respect for that, I think you're in the wrong job. Look forward to answering some questions a bit later.
Thank you very much. Our last panelist for tonight is Mr. Steve Bruce, who matriculated from Selborne College in 1983. He completed his BCom degree from Rhodes University in East London in 1988. Steve qualified as a chartered accountant in 1993 after passing the South African Institute of Chartered Accountants 3 board exams. He started his own audit, tax and accounting practice in 1995, together with a colleague whom he'd worked with at KPMG. In 2008, Steve started Bruce Chartered Accountants Incorporated and employs 31 staff and provides training for students who want to become chartered accountants. Steve has served as chairman of the Selborne College and Primary and chaired the Clarendon Primary SGB. He currently serves on both the Selborne Primary and College school trusts. Steve has been married to Lynn for 30 years and they have 3 children. Over to you, Steve. Steve, we can't hear you. Can you please switch your mic on?
There we go. Thank you for that, JJ. I'm 56 years old and still going strong and passionate about what I do. And Selborne College taught me a lot of discipline and focus. And the fact that I went to a boys' college school adds a lot of favor to my business deals, because a lot of my clients actually were from Grey PE, Queens and Dale. So we always talk about rugby days and cricket and athletics and things like that, and share common ideas that we have, and it's a great banter that we have, and we share jokes about rugby refs in Queenstown who showed a tendency to allow Queens to win, and it's a great time of banter that we have. So I'm still extremely passionate about Selborne College, hence the reason why I was the chairman of the governing body for about 4 or 5 years at the college and at the primary. And I remember my wife was a teacher at Hudson Primary School, and it came to the age of when my son needed to go to school. So she said, "What school's James going to?" So I said, "It's not even a debate, he's going to Selborne." Anyway, so I had a son that went through through school and matriculated 6 years ago. And some tips about your career. You need to exercise passion and excellence. If you don't have the passion and excellence to succeed, you're not going to have a successful career, because careers are built on a long-term focus. There's no quick fix solution. I find with the younger generation these days, they're wanting a quick fix solution, and there ain't such thing anymore as a quick fix solution. You're in for the long haul, and you've got to have blood, sweat and tears. And I experienced that in my career. There were highs and lows. I never failed an exam at school, and I never failed an exam while I was studying my degree. But unfortunately, I failed the board exam 3 times. And the problem with that is that you only write those exams once a year. So you have to wait for an entire year to write the next year. So I had to do that 3 years. So basically, my career stood still for 3 years while I was waiting to write these exams. And it wasn't because of a lack of technical ability. I actually analyzed the reason why I was failing these exams, and I was determined never to give up, because I knew that was my passion, to become a chartered accountant. I knew that when I was at school. So I was focused on what I wanted to do, and I actually analyzed it, and I went for counseling, and I realized that my problem why I was failing was because of poor exam technique, not covering the full exam questions in the right time, and actually going over the time limit per question. So therefore you were actually only ending up answering, say, 60% of the exam and not giving it a full shot. And there's a whole lot of issues about exam technique, which I learned, and I can give assistance at the end of in the question time. So the point I want to make is never give up. You need to be determined to succeed in whatever is your passion. I started my own business in '95, as JJ said, and I have an entrepreneurial spirit. I've got a lot of clients whose turnover is more than R1 billion, who actually employ their own CAs, and my speciality is group structuring. I do BE consulting, I do estate planning, trusts, and tax structuring, and assisting clients to buy and sell businesses. And I work closely with some leading commercial attorneys in the Eastern Cape, where we put deals together. So that's what my focus is, you know, assisting clients. Yes, I've got an audit practice, but I've got 2 CAs that work for me. They handle the nuts and bolts of auditing, and I oversee project management of my office on a daily basis, but I'm assisting clients with restructuring businesses and buying, selling. One of the passions that I've got is I've recently formed a corporate social investment NGO, which some other fellow colleagues of mine in East London and some attorneys, we're going to be launching that, whereby companies can donate monies to that organization for the corporate social spend in BE, and we're going to be using that money to fund the underprivileged kids in schools within East London. A classic example of what I went through when I was chairman of the Clarendon Primary School governing body is that my daughter went to play a hockey match in Parkside, and there was a young girl there who showed incredible talent for hockey. So the hockey coach came to me the next day and said, Steve, we need to approach this young girl who went to the school that we played against yesterday. To cut a long story short, we organized a bursary for her at Clarendon Primary, then at Clarendon High School, and today she actually plays for the South African women's hockey team. Her name is Bianca Wood. So that's the type of passion that I've got, to assist the underprivileged kids who don't have the ability to be able to have access to finance through their parents. And Bianca Wood is a prime example of how we as a community assisted that young girl, and look where she is today, South African women's hockey player. So that's in a nutshell what my career has been, is a passionate about what I do. And just to touch on what Andre was saying, a career, I mean a degree or diploma or some post-qualification is so crucial in today's environment. If I take my son, for example, James, he matriculated in 2016 and he went to the Sharks Academy, and the Sharks insisted that he obtain a degree. They paid for his degree. He ended up getting a BCom degree. He played for the Sharks Super Sport rugby team. He played the under-21 Currie Cup, and then he got injured. He snapped his ACL, and to cut a long story short, he now uses his degree and he's now trading in foreign currency. He's a foreign currency trader, and if he hadn't had a degree, he wouldn't be able to do that. So there we go. Thank you.
Thank you very much to all of you. We're going to open the floor to questions. So if there's anybody watching that would like to add an extra question, please just pop it into the chat box. I think we are going to start with Kanisa, although Barry and Steve, you've both mentioned entrepreneurship. And what I'd like to know is, do you think that the youth are currently equipped with entrepreneurial thinking when leaving school? Or do you think that this is something that needs to be a bigger focus within the school curriculum?
Thank you for the question, JJ. I have a very interesting thought about what the youth are going through. I think social media, for starters, has really warped everyone's sense in terms of the youth. I would love to see a lot more emphasis put on entrepreneurship in schools and in university, but I think a lot of young kids come out of school, and some of them go to university and get degrees. Some don't get degrees, but they come out and they think everything is easy. They get fooled by people posting fabulous and fancy things on social media, and they think that it's easy to attain those things, and they think that all those things are the truth about how the world operates. And they have a false idea of what entrepreneurship is. So everyone calls themselves a businessman or a businesswoman when that's not even the case. So I think in the last decade, 15 years, maybe, there's been a mismatch. You know, people are unrealistic about what entrepreneurship is. And when I do come across people, there's a young chap I met last week, Thursday, I think. I heard him on Metro FM, and he was he had a question. He was on a segment where they get given 90 seconds to present their business. And I met him. I heard what he was saying. He was looking for a solution to a challenge he's got that can help him move further in business. But I liked the way he presented himself, and he was very straight to the point, which is what I think all entrepreneurs need. But it was something I hadn't heard in a while. So I ended up reaching out to him, and we're in conversation now, and I'm going to try help him where I can. But to answer your question simply, I don't think the youth truly understand entrepreneurship, and I don't think they really are equipped. And I would like to see some of the curriculum in the schools start to teach some elements of entrepreneurship. Something as simple as sales and invoicing I think is very important.
Okay, very interesting. Do you think perhaps a more mentor type approach is something that schools could look at, even if it's not part of the curriculum, perhaps in a life orientation type setup, where we could get more entrepreneurs in to speak to the learners, as opposed to actually just saying, you know, here's a list of criteria that might make you an entrepreneur? Is that something that schools could look at?
100%. In my career, there's a friend of mine, Gosana, and he always says to me, you know, you've had such great mentors around you throughout your entire career, even starting from the days of F&B, which I've always viewed F&B as you get taught entrepreneurial ways of thinking at F&B, because everything you do when you're running a portfolio there, it's your portfolio, it's run like your business. It's an owner-manager culture kind of thing. So I do think mentorship programs can work, especially in places like East London. I was mentored when I came back to East London in 2012 to start the business importing chicken. A gentleman by the name of JD, he owns, I forget the brand of ice, but he basically supplies most of East London with ice, and his water is called glacier water. And he looked at me, he liked what I was saying, and he said, look, if you're willing to put some sweat into it, I'll assist you. And he used to borrow me his freezer buckies for me to go deliver some of my chicken, and then come back, bring it back just in time for him to go do his deliveries with his stuff. And how he borrowed me those buckies, he would say, all right, go get a quote from Avis, how much you would get charged to rent a bucky for a day. I'd go get a quote, come back, and say, okay, cool, I'll give you my bucky at 30% of that rate, and you don't have to put down a deposit. All you have to do is to show me that you are going to drive that bucky yourself. So I learned a lot of things from JD, for instance, and he's just one of many examples of mentors I've had around me. So I think it's absolutely important to have mentors go into the schools and impart some of their wisdom.
Great, thank you. Barry, what made you decide to study BCom after school, and then after BCom to move into law?
To be honest, I didn't really know exactly what I wanted to study when I left school. I knew I wanted to get into business. And I think this is probably a lesson learned. I didn't do enough really research on exactly which university was best to go for in terms of that degree. And at the time, a lot of my friends and colleagues and schoolmates were going to Stellenbosch University. So I thought, okay, I'll follow them and see what happens. So I started with a Bachelor of Economics from Stellenbosch University, which actually is not nearly as good a degree as, they say, the business science degree at the University of Cape Town. So I spent a year doing that, and then I thought, actually, this degree doesn't even have accounting in it. So I changed to BCom, which obviously then included accounting as well as economics. And then as part of the Bachelor of Economics degree, I also had you doing languages and law. The broad curriculum that a BCom law offered you, because you really had languages, you had law, you had accounting, you had economics, and so it sort of suited me because it was very broad. Me 4 years to complete my my BCom, and then 2 years of LLB on top of that, and get to BCom, I just realized I was good at law. I thought actually it's something I really enjoy, and I'm good at. So let's get into law and see where we go to. And actually at the time it was interesting because it was, you know, it was 94, 95, 96, and of course we had the new constitution. We had all that new law coming through in South Africa. So there was a new criminal law. They got rid of the death sentence in the case of State versus Makwanyana. So it was a very interesting time to be studying law and all the public law that came around with it. So I enjoyed it a hell of a lot. So it was more just a case of what was I good at. I wanted a broad degree. Then did get into law. But unfortunately, once I did my articles, I realized actually, you know, law is a very broad place. My wife's a lawyer in London, but it wasn't really for me. So it was one of those things where, you know, it stood me in really good stead. I ended up finishing in Belgium at a good law school there, meeting lots of people. And, you know, it's a good background to have, a bit like accounting. I think, you know, you can use that to become an entrepreneur. You never lose those skills and abilities, but it was more, just to be honest with you, finding my way as I went along. And hence, I think my career probably did take off a bit later, but it's never in vain. And those things you learn are never taken away from you. So you can use them, you know, all the way through your career. So I don't regret it at all. But I would say that probably if I had to go back to university again, I probably, you know, I may not study law, I may go straight into business and focus on a 4-year degree. But in the end, it stood me in good stead, and I've enjoyed doing it.
Okay, there are lots of learners who aspire to travel overseas or work overseas. How did you find the transition from working in South Africa to working in Europe?
I'm really sorry, I lost sound there for the last 10 seconds. Can you repeat that?
Right, so just wanting to find out if there were any major differences or how you found the transition from working in South Africa to working in Europe.
Look, to be honest with you, I found it a massive step up. I was at a big law firm at Cliff Decker. I mean, that wasn't straightforward. But I found the work ethic, you know, obviously going from law and then into a sort of smaller brokerage in Johannesburg, and then going to JP Morgan was a massive step up, to be honest with you, because you've got people coming in there that they want to work their 16, 17 hours a day. And that's what they did, and that's what we all did. Also, the quality of people is excellent, because London certainly then, and less so now post-Brexit, but London was attracting the very best. So London was full of Italians and French speakers, Germans, and you know, more people, one would come from a different country. So they had the ability back then, when the banks were paying really well, to get the best of the best. So it was a great challenge for me. That being said, you know, a number of those bankers in London are South Africans. So South Africans definitely hold their own and have the ability to do well in that environment. And people know that South Africans don't give up and are always looking for solutions. As a generalization, but it's absolutely true. You know, we always, it's all about problem solving in big organizations, and I think people recognize it. As a general rule, South Africans do that, but it was good to get that experience, because you were competing with the best.
Okay, great. Andre, you obviously deal with people's money for a living, which I would assume is quite a stressful environment. Can you share with us how you manage your stress?
If someone can tell me, then that would be great. No, yes, it is. I mean, you at night you need to sleep, and I think the most important thing is that you engage with each client, and you work with their investments exactly the same as what you would your own. That's what I enjoy about what I do. I construct and build investment portfolios for my clients, very much in line with what I do for myself. So it is stressful. Sometimes trades go against you. Sometimes sometimes a medium-term investment becomes a long-term investment, because in the short term it doesn't necessarily go the way you want it to. But you know, I think to show your clients that you've done the work, you've put the hours in behind the scenes to make sure that there's enough that sits behind the investment decision, that you're able to explain that rationale. It is important to have interest in your life outside of work. The ability down here in the Western Cape to come home and hop on your bike and disappear into the vineyards is something that I enjoy. It gives you an opportunity to blow off a little bit of steam. Yeah, I just think it's a real honor to work with people and walk a journey with them, and all the things that we learned at Selborne and growing up in the Eastern Cape, stuff about your integrity and the way you interact with people. If you put those things in place at the start of a client relationship, it usually serves you well.
And then following on that question, since COVID and the financial strain on the population in general, have you found that investors are less likely to take risks? Are people being more conservative in the way that they're wanting to invest their money?
I think that's still a thing that resides with each individual. You get those clients who understand the longer term nature of investment markets, and when the market's falling, they're saying, yeah, here's another 5 million rand, or so it is very much dependent on the individual. Someone who is risk averse at the start would have found the global financial crisis and the recent crisis around COVID extremely stressful and very difficult to navigate. In that time, it is very much a hold hand in experience to help people. I always say to my clients, it's my job to make unemotional investment decisions. If I'm doing that, then I'm more than likely doing the right thing by my clients. So sometimes you have to speak a few of your clients, speak them down off the roof, and hold their hand and just make sure that they keep their long-term investment goals in focus during those hard times, during the times when markets are volatile.
Thank you. Steve, if somebody wants to run their own company, would you recommend that studying to be a CA would give you, it obviously gives you exposure doing your articles to all different types of companies, financials? Is that something that somebody should look into? Would you recommend that as a path?
I will give a biased answer to that. But if you look at a couple of years ago, and I don't know what the recent stats are, but a large percentage of the JSE listed companies, the CEOs were chartered accountants. Not that they're running their own business, but yeah, it does help. And I think Kanisa said earlier that in order to run your own business, you've got to actually understand the nuts and bolts and the basics. Like I recall when I was at school, one of my best friends' dad was a bank manager. And in order to get to the level of bank manager, I know I haven't answered the question yet, but I just want to give a background. In order to get to the bank manager, you had to understand exactly what each person's role was in the bank. So you couldn't run a business or run a branch or run a bank without knowing the ins and outs of what every single component of the business is. So yes, to run a business, to be a chartered accountant, you understand finance and project management, and you understand raising capital and what is debt equity and all those terminologies. But it's not the be all and end all. You can have I've got lawyers that run their own practices, that businesses that have left the legal profession. I've got engineers that run their own businesses. It all depends on what your passion and your skills are, and you can develop those other skills of finance and that, or you can have people working for you that can assist you. So you don't necessarily have to be a chartered accountant to start your own business. You've got to understand what business you're wanting to start and what's the product you're going to sell or manufacture. And you can hire the resources of a chartered accountant. You can be an engineer, lawyer, whatever. I mean, no, you don't have to be a CA.
Okay, thank you very much. Kanisa, our Old Selbornian, Alan Gray, had a massive passion for and focused on entrepreneurship as well. Have there been any other entrepreneurs that you've really admired, and will you share with us why?
So definitely, some from a distance, because I don't know well, we don't know each other, I know of them, and some who have effectively been my mentors. If I think of closer to me, I think I mentioned the gentleman by the name of Colin Wilson, who started a business in the mid-90s, which is now the biggest stainless steel distributor in the SADC region. And he's still the MD of the group, and he still does the deals. And I most times when I walk into the building, I go to his office and I just walk in there and I say hi and I sit down, and all I'm doing is 90% of the time I disturb him, by the way, but all I'm doing is I'm sponging off his knowledge. And it's the common factor with these guys that I've met along the way. Dr. Tierney Latafan was one of them. I think Dr. Zolile Makatuga as well, who's inspired me. Those are people that you might not know of. Is that they're all simplistic in their approach. They really want to get the business done. They do it with integrity. But one thing I've absolutely admired about these people is that they put people first. A lot of people, entrepreneurs that I've met that have done very, very well during the tough times, I'd say maybe in the last decade, a lot of the guys, you hear them say, we just want to keep our guys employed. At this point, we're not about the profits because, times are tough, the economy is not doing well. As long as we can get our guys, we can keep our guys employed so that they can put food on the table. And those little things to me, not just to maximize profitability. Those are the little things that inspire me. So to answer your question, yes, most of the people aren't known that inspire me in general, but it's just people I've met who've done extremely well for themselves, and I find them to be successful, not because they've made a lot of money, but I think because they've added so much value. They've employed people, they've left, they're sitting with legacies that they've built from the beginning. And it's just extraordinary to watch.
Thank you. Steve, you mentioned earlier that you're dealing with a lot of people who'd gone to boys' schools as well, and you had the rugby as something to chat to. East London's obviously a smallish town, and you have personal relationships with people. Have you ever found it difficult to work with somebody who was a friend who expected, I don't know, perhaps had unrealistic expectations because there was a personal connection, or have you managed to find that line where we are now talking business? The friendship sort of is there, but it has nothing to do with the situation.
Yeah, when you enter into a meeting, I'm not a business guru or one of these speakers that can hype you up. So when you enter into a meeting, you've got to have some sort of common ground. So you can't, you can't. My view is you can't just be clinical and enter the room and just start talking business straight away. You need to find a balance between, building a relationship with somebody, asking how they do, inquiring of them, how's their family, break the ice. It's called an icebreaker. So break the ice and get to know them just apart from the business. And eventually when you have the icebreaker questions, you get to know them, their background, and they might have been at school, at the same school as you, but 10 years later, because generally you don't know the people behind you, you only know the people above you. And then you then sort of move over into the business field of what you need to discuss. So it's important to actually build relationships, and through networking of the boys' college schools in the Eastern Cape, that's been a huge factor, a positive. But I rarely go into a meeting where I just come straight out with the business of the day that one needs to discuss. One always needs to have an icebreaker, and those factors are important to build relationship with people. Yes, you don't want to be their personal buddy, because there are some tough decisions that you have to make. You've got to advise people, and if you become their mate, then it's more difficult to make that decision to advise them on what to do. But you can't be a stonewall, ice cold person. You need to build a relationship, and the icebreaker is a good one.
Absolutely, thank you. We're going to close off. I think there's time for one more question. Andre, do you think that Varsity Cup Rugby is a good platform to study and still play rugby with ambitions of making it one day?
So I think the bit I'd like to share there is that at the start of your life, wherever it is to not throw all your eggs into one basket. So I would absolutely support that, whether we spoke to guys going to the Sharks Academy, but being afforded the opportunity to learn, to study, to get a degree behind their name. Varsity Cup's a nice opportunity for young guys to get out there to see how they go in the sports environment, but to live a life where there is balance and where there's an opportunity to to increase your skill set. I think that's the thing I'd probably want to leave is who you are as a human being is about all the things you've experienced throughout your life. The more diverse the things you've had the opportunity to experience in your life, I think the richer and more a more balanced person you will be, and I think that very definitely puts you in good stead to succeed in whatever you choose to. So, yeah.
Thank you. And then, Andre, I put you on the spot earlier about how you deal with your stress. Kanisa and Steve, can you share any advice with how you find that balance between, especially after COVID, a lot of people have struggled. The lines have become very blurred between your personal time and your work time with working from home. How do you find the time or how do you balance your stress?
Okay, I'll go first, I guess. In fact, after COVID, probably last year, I started doing this. I started mountain biking, and I don't do it professionally or competitively. I just do it to de-stress. There's very lovely trails at various different farms. So I'm part of a club where you have access to about 7 different farms and trails. That I find to be very relaxing. And what I try to do nowadays is, if I'm traveling domestically, especially, I try to stay in places that have beautiful views, like the sea, or I stay in a farm somewhere, at an Airbnb or whatever. And I find that actually de-stresses me. And I must say, I never thought I'd say this. My kids actually, help me relax as well. They're very witty. I don't know who they take off that. I do think it's me. I'm sure my wife will disagree. But I find joy in hanging out with them.
Steve,
Okay,
any way that you...
Yeah.
Yes.
What I forgot to actually mention, I currently employ 2 Old Selbornians, and I have employed many Old Selbornians over the years, and there's a standing joke in my office that if you went to Selborne College, you come for an interview with Steve, you don't need a CV, you get the job because you went to Selborne. Whereas all the ones from Hudson and Stirling and Cambridge, they need to bring their CV with all their records. So I even employed an old Dalian and an Old Selbornian on the side of the rugby field at Old Boys Club one evening. So yeah, I'm extremely passionate about Selborne and the brother schools in East London to recruiting young budding trainees. Getting on to stress, how I relieve my stress. There's numerous ways. I run about 3 times a week. I'm a fanatical park runner, so I actually go to various park runs around the country. I've done 3 park runs. I've done park runs in 3 different countries: New Zealand, Holland, and Italy. I've actually just come back from Holland, a 3-week cycle tour with my wife. We cycled from Brussels in Belgium through to Amsterdam, which was 400 kilometers in 7 days. I do the park runs every Saturday. I've done 44 different park runs around the world. And I balance my holidays with the park run. So I always work out when my travels, we have to do a park run. I do a lot of mountain bike riding. This last weekend, in fact, we cycled 180 kilometers from Colchester in Port Elizabeth up to through the Addo Elephant Park up to Kirkwood and back, and also through the Zeeberg Mountains. I'm going this weekend to cycle to Carmouth, and then Namaqualand in September. We're cycling 4 days in the Namaqualand through the Namaqualand Daisies. So that's how I relieve my stress: exercise, running, mountain biking, and indoor. I've got an indoor bicycle which I use on the Zwift, so I do indoor cycling. So that's how I relieve my stress. And I don't work at night. I make a point of, when I get home, I have family time, and with my wife. I don't have any kids at home anymore because my son lives in Durban. My eldest daughter is at second year Stellenbosch University, and my youngest daughter is in matric at DSG in Grahamstown. So I spend time with my wife, and I do a bit of indoor training on the bike if the weather's bad, and I don't work at night. So that's how I manage my stress.
And I'd just like to add there, sorry, Jason, can I just add one point to vouch for what Steve is saying? He actually hired me for 4 days. I was in standard 7, which is grade 9, going into grade 10, standard 8. Our family parental home is next door to a company he used to be with, and I was hired for 4 days. I just wanted to say that.
I meant to do it 4 days.
Right, I just want to ask, we seem to have lost Barry, must be a connection issue, but just to thank you for your time and sharing your valuable life lessons. I'm sure that the learners that watch this, or anyone that watches this, will have each taken something from it, and hopefully that will help them make a decision about their career or possibly how to deal with their stress. But just genuinely, thank you for your time and sharing what you have accomplished with our learners.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thanks very much.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much.